It's 3 a.m. Your mind is racing. You look around, everyone else is asleep. You're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're even feeling a bit hopeless. And everything in you is saying, don't bother anyone, just get through it alone. I've heard this from so many people in moments like this, and I understand why it feels like the safest option, especially for men. But isolation is often what makes things so much worse. Connection, even a small one, can completely shift what happens next. Hi, I'm Cheryl, and I'm the creator of the Heart to Heal method, a framework for emotional regulation, anxiety reduction, and nervous system support. I work with people experiencing anxiety, overwhelm, panic, and intense nighttime thoughts, including many high-achieving individuals who appear composed during the day but struggle silently at night. One of the most important patterns that I see is this. And people will say, I didn't reach out to anyone because I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to appear weak. And what I say to this really gently is, I understand that feeling. But I also want to show you why that instinct can become dangerous when your distress is quite high. And how reaching out can actually change what is happening inside your nervous system. You've probably heard me talk about this quite a lot of times, and I am really very passionate about it. But I am on what I'm calling my one-woman mission to reduce the amount of suicides that happen in men in this country. Men are committing suicide at a really high rate. And not only is it men, when you think about suicide, you tend to think about young men. And yes, there is a lot of young people that are doing it. But it's now becoming that men in the 40s, in the 50s, and this isn't just me saying, oh, it's something I want to do. I'm saying it because I've lived through the experience of people actually doing that. And I feel that we need, to be talking more. We need to get men to be talking more about how they're feeling and what's going on, without actually trying to brush it under the carpet, because that's what we've been told for thousands of years that they should be doing. It infuriates me that men are expected to not even bother about their emotions or the feelings and things like that, and just are told to just get on with it. Don't show any sign of weakness, because if you show signs of weakness, then that shows your vulnerability, and if you show your vulnerability, people can get in, get trampled on, and all this kind of business. That is a lot of BS as far as I'm concerned. I think men and boys and men across the whole spectrum should be talking about how they're feeling, what they're feeling, what's going on, what the pressures are. Dads should be talking to the children about it and letting them know that there is always an outlet for them to come to. So, I do feel really passionately about this. I am on my one-woman mission to stop it. If it's just one person I start, then I've achieved something. And I do feel really passionately about this, so you'll probably hear me talk about it quite a lot. I just want people to not be, or men, not to be feeling that they get to a point where the only way out is suicide, and that is never an option, or should never be an option. Again, I'm sorry if that triggers anybody. I don't want to trigger people, but I just want people to be aware of it. At night time, everything changes. It's like when you're in pain, you've got a headache or toothache or whatever, it always seems to be worse at night. And that's because you've got fewer distractions going on around you. There's less input from the outside world. So you have more internal focus. And in that space, the nervous system becomes more sensitive. I often see people who hold it all together during the day. And at night time, it begins to come down on them when there is finally nowhere else for it to go. So thoughts that were manageable earlier can feel much heavier at 3 a.m. Not because they've changed, but because your system is no longer buffered by external structures. When someone sits alone in intense anxiety or hopelessness at night, a few things tend to happen. Thoughts become more repetitive, emotions feel more absolute, perspectives feel really, really narrow, the nervous system stays activated, and something I see very clearly in my line of work is when you're alone with your thoughts for long enough, they start to feel like facts instead of states. And this is why isolation can be so powerful and so risky at the same time. Not because you're weak, but because the nervous system is designed to regulate through connection and not isolation. When you reach out in a small way, even in a really small way, something important shifts in your body. The nervous system receives a signal of safety. The emotional intensity begins to reduce. You start thinking less rigidly, and the sense of being trapped starts to ease. So this could be, just texting somebody that you trust, or maybe calling a friend or a family member, or even speaking to a therapist or a support worker, support service, something like that, or contacting a crisis line. There's quite a few of them about. What matters most is not what you do, it's that you no longer hold it entirely on your own. If you're carrying a mattress and you have one end and someone else has the other, it's a lot easier to carry. Because isolation intensifies distress and connection regulates it. In my work, I often help clients build what I call emotional safety systems. So support is not just something they try to access only in a crisis. It becomes something that is already prepared. And this includes things like recognising early signs that overwhelm is building, understanding personal triggers that sort of come up at night time, developing practical tools for grounding and regulation, identifying who is safe to reach out to, reducing shame around needing support. That is a massive one because there's so much shame attached to it if you need support, especially for a man. And often people will tell me something shifts quite quickly when they have this in place, because they tend to feel less alone at night. So thoughts don't start attacking them as soon as they get into bed. They feel less overwhelmed and panicked. They feel like they're getting a better quality sleep. And there's more confidence in their ability to cope. And that's not because your life has suddenly become perfect, and all unicorn, sunshine and rainbows. It's because they're no longer facing it in an isolated state. If this resonates with you, then please take a moment to reflect on this question. Who would you reach out to at 3 o'clock in the morning if you felt overwhelmed? And not as a last resort, but as part of a support system that already exists. Because connection is not a failure of strength. It's one of the most effective forms of regulations that we have. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and follow along for more. You can also find my weekly link to newsletter, Permission to Pause, and my monthly letter, Inner Compass, for deeper insights. And if you'd like support, details are available below. Take care, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.